Nobody warns you about the moment your marriage ends. There's no alarm, no flashing signal, no concerned friend pulling you aside to say, "Hey, heads up, your entire life is about to collapse on a Friday night in your mother-in-law's living room while a Marvin Gaye playlist runs in the background." Mine ended at 9:51 p.m. on a Friday in Brentwood, Nashville, Tennessee. I know the exact time because I was flat on my back, staring at a ceiling fan, completely unable to move my legs when a man named Ted Calloway crouched down beside me and said two things in a voice so calm it cut through everything. "Don't move. I'm calling 911. It's 9:51. I had spoken fewer than 10 words to Ted Calloway in my life before that moment. In that moment, I would have made that man the godfather of my children. My name is Marcus Webb. I am 43 years old. I work as a structural engineer at Bridgepoint Industrial Group in East Nashville. And for the past 8 years, I have been married to a woman named Diane, whose family, the Harfields, have made it their quiet, sustained, collective mission to remind me at every possible opportunity that I am not quite good enough for her. I will give you a moment with that family. The Harfields, Victor Harfield, Sandra Harfield, Kyle Harfield, Amber Harfield, for people with one shared talent, the ability to make a man feel, without ever saying so directly, that his presence in their family is something between an inconvenience and a mild embarrassment. You would think a family saddled with a name that sounds like Hardfield might develop some softness to compensate, some humor about the human condition, some awareness that life is difficult and nobody gets out clean. They did not develop any of those things. What they developed instead was an extraordinary facility for looking down on other people. I'm not a psychologist. I'm an engineer. I notice load-bearing structures and where they are weakest. And the Harfield family's load-bearing structure was constructed almost entirely out of the contempt they held for anyone they considered beneath them. The contempt was never overt. They were too refined for that, or at least they believed they were. It was the pauses. The way Kyle, Diane's older brother, would look at my truck when I pulled into the driveway, and then look away, as though the truck had personally offended him. The way Sandra, the family's emotional center of gravity, would smile at me with her whole face except her eyes. The way Amber, the birthday girl, would ask about my work in that particular tone people use when they're asking a question they already find boring. 8 years of this. 8 years of showing up, being cordial, eating Sandra's dry brisket, and calling it excellent. Watching football beside a man who had shoved me from behind at a family cookout 18 months earlier and laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd seen all summer. That was the first time Kyle did something physical. I was standing at the grill, back turned, and he came up behind me and planted both hands into my shoulder blades hard enough that I stumbled forward and nearly caught the burner. He laughed. His buddy laughed. Diane was inside and didn't see it. I didn't say a word that afternoon. I steadied myself. I turned around. I looked at him. Noted I thought. Noted and filed. That is the thing about me that Kyle Harfield never understood. I am a structural engineer. I do not respond to problems emotionally. I document them. I assess load-bearing capacity. I find the weakness in the foundation, and then I wait for the right conditions. I have been waiting. About 7 weeks before Amber's birthday party, I had a quiet, 2-hour meeting in a downtown Nashville office with an attorney named Raymond Polk. Raymond has been practicing law for 22 years. He has steady hands, patient eyes, and the kind of coffee maker in his waiting room that communicates he takes his work seriously. I sat across from him, and I told him everything. The cookout, the forearm bruise, photographed and dated the same night it happened. The 3 text messages Kyle had sent me in the months since, each one a little more aggressive than the last, all of them preserved with metadata intact. A written account of an accidental elbow thrown during a family flag football game at Thanksgiving, documented by me, in writing, the night it happened. 4 years of incidents, organized chronologically. Raymond looked through the folder without hurrying. Then he looked up. "Mr. Webb," he said, "what exactly are you expecting to happen?" I told him I didn't know precisely, but I wanted to be ready. He told me I was already more prepared than 90% of the clients who came through his door after something bad had already happened. He told me to keep documenting, gave me his direct number, charged me for 2 hours of consultation, worth every cent. I should also tell you about Derek Haynes. Derek has been my closest friend since we were both 20 years old, sharing a bad apartment in East Nashville when the city was still figuring out what it wanted to be. Derek is now a senior detective with the Metro Nashville Police Department. He is 6'3", unhurried in literally every situation I have ever witnessed, and has a memory like a steel filing cabinet that was built by someone who took the job seriously. Derek had texted me at 4:30 that afternoon. Asterisk, you sure you want to go tonight? Say the word and I'll come with you. Asterisk. I told him I was fine, that it was just a birthday party, that I was a grown man who could eat dry brisket and make conversation for 3 hours without incident. I would regret that, not for the reasons you'd think. We arrived at Sandra Harfield's house in Brentwood at 7 on the dot. It was a large brick colonial in the kind of neighborhood where people pressure wash their driveways on Sunday mornings and argue about HOA paint swatches. Sandra had lived there for 22 years and treated it like a museum dedicated to her own importance. There were maybe 30 guests. Diane dissolved into her family the moment we walked in, laughing, hugging, moving room to room like she'd been submerged all week and had finally come up for air. I got myself a drink, found a spot near the back porch, and prepared to endure. Kyle Harfield found me within 10 minutes. Marcus, he said, the way you'd say the name of a minor inconvenience, like a slow checkout lane. Kyle. I matched his energy exactly. He was a big man. Kyle had played defensive end at Tennessee State and made sure nobody ever forgot it. He coached youth football now and had the complete personality of every youth football coach you've ever encountered. Loud, territorial, under the absolute impression that the ability to intimidate teenagers transferred to every other environment he walked into. He stood beside me, surveying the party like a man checking on his property. You look tense, he said. I'm relaxed. You always look like you're calculating something. Because I am, I thought. Just enjoying the party, Kyle. He smirked and drifted away. I watched him go. 3 hours later, the party had settled into its late evening rhythm. Music low, conversations overlapping, people loosening up. Ted Calloway, an old neighbor of Sandra's, I gathered, was standing near the bookshelf with a glass of red wine and the quiet, watchful eyes of a man who had learned, over many years, that observing was more interesting than performing. I liked him immediately and instinctively, the way you like people who seem to actually be paying attention. I didn't know yet just how important Ted Calloway was about to become. That's when Kyle's voice carried from inside. Loud, theatrical, performing for a crowd. He was telling a story. The punchline of the story involved my younger sister Angela. I will not repeat what he said. I will only tell you that it was the specific kind of comment a certain type of man makes about a certain type of woman when he is confident he is in safe company and certain that nobody who cares is listening. He was wrong about that. I set my drink on the porch railing, walked inside, calm, quiet, the way water is calm right before it goes over a waterfall. The small group around Kyle was doing that uncomfortable go-along laughter, the kind people produce when they know something isn't right but don't want to be the one who says so. Diane was not in the room. Amber was, though, leaning against the wall with a birthday girl smirk, watching her brother perform. Say it again, I said. The laughter stopped. Kyle turned, smiled. There he is. Marcus, buddy, I was just. Look at me and say it again. The room went quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something with actual gravity is about to happen. Not manufactured family drama. Something real. Kyle's smile stayed in place. He was good at this part, the performance of being unbothered. Lighten up, man. It was a joke. It wasn't funny. You're embarrassing yourself, Marcus. He put his drink down, rolled his neck, and I saw it. The decision forming behind his eyes. Kyle Harfield had been the biggest, loudest man in every room he'd ever occupied. And right now, in front of people who mattered to him, I was making him look small. He wasn't going to let that stand. He clapped me on the shoulder, hard, and steered me toward the back door with the practiced ease of a man making something aggressive look casual. Come on, let's step outside. Cool off. I moved toward the porch. He followed. I didn't see the second hand coming. That's the thing about Kyle Harfield. He wasn't angry. He was deliberate. What happened next was not a shove. It was not an accident. It was not horseplay. It was a full body slam. Both arms full force from behind while my back was turned. I hit the hardwood floor of that porch at an angle that I would later learn from a physician who used the word impact 3 times in a single sentence while making direct eye contact with a uniformed officer was not consistent with a stumble or a fall. Then I couldn't move my legs. Not. My legs felt heavy. Not. My legs were unsteady. I could not move them at all. I lay on Sandra Harfield's back porch staring up at a ceiling fan spinning slowly in the November air, and I experienced the specific, clarifying terror of a man who does not know if he will ever walk again. Diane appeared above me. I remember what I thought in that moment. Clearly, the way you remember things that happen right before your life changes direction permanently. Asterisk, here it is. Here's the moment she chooses me. Asterisk. That hopeful, stubborn, persistent thought that 8 years of marriage plants in you like a weed you can never fully pull. Walk it off, she said. Stop being a baby. I couldn't walk anything off. I couldn't walk at all. Amber pushed through to the front of the small crowd that had gathered. Oh my God, he's doing this on purpose. You are ruining my birthday, Marcus. Seriously. Kyle stood at the edge of the porch with his arms crossed, smirking, not worried, not guilty, just smirking, the way a man smirks when he believes he is going to get away with something. Ted Calloway pushed through the crowd, crouched beside me, put one steady hand on my arm. Don't move, he said. I'm calling 911. It's 9:51. Don't move. The lead paramedic's name was Renee. Mid-30s, no nonsense, the kind of person who walks into chaos and immediately makes it smaller. She assessed me with practiced precision, asked me to squeeze her fingers, asked me to push against her hand with my foot. I could do neither. She asked what happened. I told her. She listened without expression. Then she looked at the angle of my body on the floor, looked at where Kyle was standing, looked back at me. She picked up her radio and called for police backup, not as a formality, not as routine protocol, but with the particular tone of a person who has already made up her mind about what she is looking at. As they prepare to move me, Renee leaned close, close enough that only I could hear. I've seen this injury before, she said quietly. I'm filing my report accordingly. I didn't fully understand what that meant until the following morning. Hospital ceilings are all the same. Acoustic tile, fluorescent light, the occasional water, stain nobody ever explains. I spent a great deal of time staring at the ceiling of Vanderbilt University Medical Center on Saturday morning, doing the kind of thinking you do when your body has gone quiet and there is nothing left to distract you from yourself. The MRI results came in at 8:22 a.m. The attending physician, Dr. Merritt, a careful man who selected his words the way a watchmaker selects his tools, sat beside my bed and laid them out plainly. Severe spinal cord compression, significant nerve involvement, 2 points of impact that, in Dr. Merritt's clinical assessment, and here's where he looked directly at the uniformed officer standing near the door, were inconsistent with an accidental fall. He used the word impact 3 times. Each time, he made eye contact with the officer. I noted this. The officer noted it too. Derek Haynes walked into my room at 9:07 a.m. He arrived before Diane did. I want you to sit with that for a moment. My best friend, the one I'd had to be talked out of bringing along to the party, arrived at the hospital before my wife of 8 years. He walked in with 2 coffees and the expression of a man who has already read the overnight reports and is being careful about what he says first. Corbett, Ted Calloway gave a full statement. He said, handed me a cup. Detailed. Consistent. He was standing 8 feet away and had a clear line of sight. Good, I said. The paramedics report flagged the injury as inconsistent with an accidental fall, as she said she would. He paused. Kyle Harfield is going to be asked to come in for questioning today. You understand what that means. It means he's done smirking, I said. Derek almost smiled. Almost. Diane arrived at 9:44 a.m. She did not come alone. She came with Sandra and with Amber, who apparently considered the hospital room of the man she'd accused of ruining her birthday an appropriate place to spend the morning after. The Harfields did not disappoint. Diane looked at me with the expression of a woman who had been coached on the drive over, concerned but contained, sympathetic but strategic. How are you feeling? She asked. I can't feel my legs, Diane. The doctors think it'll improve, though, that it's temporary. There it was. Not. I'm so sorry this happened. Not. I should have believed you. I should have stood up for you. Not. I love you and I'm terrified. Just, is this going to be an inconvenience long term? Sandra stood near the window with her arms folded, looking at me the way she had always looked at me, like a problem her daughter had brought home and never adequately resolved. Amber was on her phone. We need to talk about how we handle this, Diane said. As a family. Handle what, Diane? Kyle didn't mean. It was a situation that got out of hand. As a family, Diane, I said, I'd like you to meet someone. Derek Haynes stepped out of the bathroom. He had not been in there for any particular reason. He had simply been waiting. He is a patient man, Derek Haynes, and he has excellent instincts for the right moment. His badge was visible on his belt. The temperature in that room dropped about 15 degrees. This is Derek Haynes, I said, senior detective, Metro Nashville Police. He's been briefed. Sandra unfolded her arms. Amber looked up from her phone. Diane's carefully assembled expression developed a visible crack. Derek said simply, Mrs. Webb. Mrs. Harfield. Ms. Harfield. He nodded at each of them in turn. I'll need to speak with each of you at some point today. Nothing to worry about right now. Just wanted to introduce myself. Nobody in that room said a single word. It was the most beautiful silence I had ever been part of. Here is what the Harfield family did not know. Sitting in that hospital room, trying to compose themselves. 7 weeks earlier, when I had walked into Raymond Polk's office on Demonbrun Street, there had been one item at the back of my folder that I had not discussed even with Derek. A printout, a name, an address in the Sylvan Park neighborhood of Nashville. A man named Travis Hensley. Travis Hensley had been Kyle Harfield's neighbor 2 years earlier. They'd had a dispute. I had pieced the details together from a mutual acquaintance, a partially sealed court record, and one very informative conversation in a neighborhood gathering 3 years ago, when Travis had pulled me quietly to the side of the room and said, Between you and me, watch yourself with that brother-in-law of yours. He put me in the ER. His family pressured me into settling. I've regretted staying quiet about it ever since. I had noted that too. Raymond Polk located Travis Hensley in 48 hours. Travis Hensley, it turned out, had been waiting for a reason to stop staying quiet. His statement was sitting in Raymond's office before Kyle ever arrived at the police station for questioning. Kyle walked in that Saturday afternoon thinking it was a formality, the kind of thing big, loud, confident men believe only happens to other people. He walked in with the smirk, still operational. The smirk did not survive the meeting. It would be the last time Kyle Harfield smirked for a very long time. Let me tell you what happened for everyone involved. Kyle was formally charged Monday morning. Felony assault inflicting serious bodily injury. The charge carries a sentencing range that his attorney immediately began trying to negotiate down, which told me everything I needed to know about how strong the attorney privately believed our case was. He was arraigned Tuesday. The Nashville Banner ran a brief item, just a paragraph in the local crime section, but the internet keeps everything forever, and several people who knew Kyle from his playing days found it very shareable. The youth football league he coached called him on Wednesday. He was placed on indefinite administrative leave pending the outcome. Their official statement used the phrase commitment to the safety of our young athletes twice. I appreciated the symmetry. His bail conditions prohibited him from contacting me, from contacting Ted Calloway, and from attending any family gatherings where I might be present, which meant, among other things, that Kyle Harfield was legally prohibited from showing up at family events for the family he had spent years bullying people in the name of. I did not engineer this specifically. I will admit I enjoyed it specifically. Travis Hensley's statement, the prior assault, now part of the official record, elevated the case from an isolated incident to a documented pattern of behavior. Kyle's attorney went very quiet when that came up. The particular quiet of an attorney who has just realized that what his client told him was not the complete picture. The civil suit Raymond filed against Kyle personally landed on a Friday, 1 week to the day after I hit Sandra's porch floor. I appreciate symmetry. Amber had made one significant error in judgment that Friday night. She had filmed part of the aftermath on her phone. Not the lead-up, not Kyle's approach, just the aftermath. Me on the floor, Diane telling me to walk it off. Ted Calloway crouching beside me. She had filmed it the way people film things at parties when they think something embarrassing is happening to someone they don't like. For laughs. For the group chat. That 17-second video became Exhibit A. It also became Exhibit A in the civil proceedings and, through channels I was not involved in and cannot speak to, found its way to people who found it exactly as illuminating as I did. The response was not kind. Amber's social media presence, previously devoted to lifestyle content and birthday celebration posts, including a smiling selfie posted at 11:22 p.m. the night in question, captioned "Best Birthday Ever," underwent a significant audience adjustment. I did not feel particularly bad about this. She had called me a baby while I lay paralyzed on her mother's floor. And she had filmed it for her amusement. There's a cost to that. In her case, it was several thousand followers and a comment section she ultimately had to disable. Sandra had not shoved me. She had not filmed me. She had not said anything particularly cruel in the immediate aftermath. She had simply stood near the window with her arms folded and watched, which was, if anything, worse. But Raymond Polk is a thorough attorney. The civil suit named Sandra as a secondary defendant on the grounds that she had knowingly hosted an environment where prior physical aggression had occurred and had taken no steps to prevent its recurrence. Discovery produced text messages in which Sandra had discussed Kyle's temper, specifically in the context of his behavior toward me. In one message sent to Diane 14 months before the party, she had written, "Asterisk, just keep Marcus and Kyle on opposite sides of the room tonight. You know how Kyle gets. Asterisk." She knew. She hosted the party anyway. She did not keep us separated. Her assets were tied up in civil proceedings. The Colonial in Brentwood, the museum of her own importance, was listed for sale within the year. Diane came to see me once at the rehabilitation center before the divorce was finalized. I was doing physical therapy, slowly, stubbornly reintroducing myself to my own legs. She sat in the visitor area and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her before. Not the managed concern from the hospital, not the coached sympathy of the arraignment period. Something more honest than both of those things. "I should have told you about Kyle," she said, "a long time ago." "You should have," I agreed. "I thought if I just kept the peace." "You kept his peace, Diane, not mine." She didn't have an answer for that. We sat there a while longer. Then she left. I went back to physical therapy. That was the last real conversation we had. She had laughed off the prenuptial agreement as unnecessary when we got married. Said it with that particular smile that meant she thought it was quaint and slightly insulting that I'd even brought it up. I had smiled back and said nothing. The prenuptial agreement had been filed the same day as our marriage license. Raymond Polk, whom I had first been referred to by a colleague at Bridgepoint 4 years earlier for a completely unrelated matter, had drawn it up. It was thorough, unambiguous, signed by both of us before 2 witnesses and a notary. Diane's attorney reportedly called it surgical. I'm told he said this with the slightly deflated tone of a man who has discovered that the other side's foundation is load-bearing in precisely the right places. She walked away from our marriage with what she had brought into it. Nothing more. 8 weeks after the party, on a Tuesday morning in December, I walked out of the Vanderbilt Rehabilitation Center on my own power. Slowly, with a cane I planned to be rid of by February. But under my own power. Derek Haynes was waiting in the parking lot. He had 2 coffees. He is a reliable man in that way. "How do you feel?" he asked. Like a man who just walked out of a rehabilitation center under his own power. Good answer. Raymond Polk was there too, which surprised me. He was standing slightly to the side with his leather briefcase and the expression of a man who has something to hand someone. He handed me an envelope. "Kyle Harfield accepted the plea," he said. 24 months, minimum security, mandatory anger management, 4 years probation following release. Travis Hensley's statement was the thing that sealed it. I nodded. The civil settlement from Sandra and Kyle is in the envelope as well. Covers your medical costs, rehabilitation expenses, lost income during leave, and, he paused. The particular pause of an attorney preparing to say a number. Damages. I looked at the envelope. Is it enough to be genuinely annoying to them? I asked. Raymond very nearly smiled. Very annoying. Dara drove me back to East Nashville. I had sold the house, mine and Diane's, during the proceedings, and found a smaller place across town. A clean, quiet townhouse with good morning light and no memories in the walls. I was beginning to like it. That evening, I sat in my truck in the parking lot of Bridgepoint Industrial Group, which I hadn't visited since the Friday before the party. I was going back Monday. I was ready. I sat there in the quiet and looked at the building, taking in the familiar geometry of it, the way the late afternoon light caught the glass facade. Structural, solid, still standing. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. A short message. I read it. Then I read it again. And for the first time in 8 weeks, for the first time since I had been staring at a ceiling fan on a November Friday night, unable to feel my legs, I smiled. Really smiled. The kind that starts somewhere behind the sternum and works its way out before you can stop it. I won't tell you what the message said. Some things belong only to the person they happen to. Some conclusions don't need to be shared to be complete. What I will tell you is this. I put the phone in my pocket, started the truck, pulled out of the parking lot, and I drove home,